Chapter 17, verses 39 to 51, but I'll just read a few other verses before that. Chapter 17 begins, it talks about, and Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together and pitched by the Valley of Elah. You can see behind me. And set the battle in array against the Philistines. And the Philistines stood on a mountain on the one side, this is where we are here, and on the other side, and Israel stood on the mountain on the other side, in behind us. And there was a valley between them. And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. That's, I believe, over 9 feet. And he had a helmet of brass upon his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass, about 125 pounds of chainmail, a coat. And he had greaves of brass upon his legs and a target of brass between his shoulders. And the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron. That's about 15 pounds, just the head of it. And one bearing a shield went before him. And he stood and cried unto the armies of Israel and said unto them, imagine standing here or somewhere and shouting out to them, why have you come out to set your battle in array? Am I not a Philistine, and ye servants to Saul? Choose a man for you, and let him come down to me. If he be able to fight with me, and to kill me, then will be your servants. But if I prevail against him, and kill him, then shall ye be our servants, and serve us. And the Philistine said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. When Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. And then verse 16, and the Philistine drew near morning and evening and presented himself 40 days. Not just one day did he do that, but 40 days. Verse 24, and all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, they fled from him, and they were so afraid. Verse 26, David spoke to the men that stood by him, saying, what shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, David says, that he should defy the armies of the living God? And here we're going to pick up our story here in verse 38. And Saul armed David with his armor, and he put a helmet of brass upon his head. Also he armed him with a coat of mail. And David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And so he wasn't comfortable in that armor, and he took it off. And David said to unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. I haven't had these things on. I don't know what I can't walk in this stuff, basically. And David put them off. And he took his staff in his hand. He chose 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in a shepherd's bag, which he had, even in a scrip. And his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. And the Philistine came on, and drew near unto David, and the man that bare the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, and ruddy, and of a fair countenance. And the Philistine said unto David, am I a dog? Am I a dog that thou comest to me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air and to the beasts of the field. Then said David to the Philistine, thou comest to me with a sword and with a spear and with a shield, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, which you have defiled. This day will the Lord deliver thee into my hand, and I will smite thee, and take thy head from thee, and I will give the carcasses of the host of the Philistine this day unto the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with the sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. And it came to pass when the Philistine arose and came and drew nigh to meet David. Just imagine what's happening here now. He drew nigh to meet David, that David hurried and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. And David put in his hand in his bag, and took a stone, and slang it, and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine, and slew him, but there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran and stood upon the Philistine, and took his sword, and drew it out of its sheath thereof, and slew him, and cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled.